The camera was found on a glacier that wasn't supposed to exist anymore. June 2024, southern Alaska. A solo hiker named Travis Keene was crossing the Harding Icefield when he saw something jutting from the meltwater. A rectangle of black plastic, half encased in crystal clear ice. At first, he thought it was a chunk of debris from an old expedition. But when sunlight hit the surface, he saw the familiar shape of a lens, a camera. He knelt, chipping gently with his ice axe until the block cracked loose. The brand name was barely visible. Nikon F100, film model, the kind professionals used 2 decades earlier. Inside, frozen but intact, was a roll of undeveloped film. The GPS tag on Travis's phone read 60 degrees north, deep inside Kenai Fjords National Park, miles from any marked trail. He snapped a picture and emailed it to the park office that night with a short message. Found this halfway to exit glacier. Might belong to someone missing. The next morning, rangers called back immediately. They'd seen that camera before, in evidence photos from 2002. That year, a photographer named Daniel Reed, 34, vanished while shooting the retreat of the same glacier. His disappearance had haunted Alaskan search and rescue circles for more than 20 years. He'd been a rising nature photographer whose work appeared in National Geographic Traveler. The Icefield was supposed to be his masterpiece, documenting how climate change reshaped the wild. But somewhere between camp and the ridgeline, Daniel disappeared. In 2002, rescuers found only fragments. A tripod twisted by impact, a boot print fading into snow, and a note in his tent reading, "Light changes fast here. Follow it." For years, that line became legend among photographers chasing impossible shots. The file closed quietly in 2004, labeled Presumed Exposure and Fall. His family never recovered a body, a camera, or closure until Travis's email. When rangers retrieved the camera from the ice, it looked nearly new beneath the frost. They shipped it to Anchorage, where forensic technicians thawed it slowly in a temperature-controlled chamber. Inside, the roll of Kodak Ektachrome film survived almost perfectly, 12 exposures, the last one only half advanced, meaning he'd clicked the shutter moments before the camera froze. Or before he did. Before developing the film, investigators revisited the original disappearance timeline. Daniel Reed had flown into Seward on May 29, 2002, renting a small seaplane to reach the glacier basin. Weather records showed deteriorating conditions, 40-mile winds, heavy cloud, temperature dropping below 20 degrees Fahrenheit overnight. He radioed base once on May 30th, reporting clear light over ridgeline, shooting until dusk, then silence. The next morning, pilots spotted his tent flattened near the moraine. Searchers reached it 2 days later. Fresh snow had already buried most traces. They assumed a fall or avalanche took him. Without coordinates, the ice was endless. When the new film arrived at the Anchorage lab in 2024, the technician, Sarah Van, handled it like glass. She'd restored vintage negatives before, but never one recovered from a glacier. The film was brittle, emulsions crystallized from decades of freeze-thaw. She spent 2 days humidifying the roll before exposure under infrared light. The first frame emerged faint but legible. An image of the glacier basin at sunset, golden light streaking across blue ice. The second frame made her stop breathing. It showed Daniel himself, captured in a reflection. Camera raised, smiling faintly into the lens. Behind him, the shadow of another figure, distant, blurred. Sarah called her supervisor. Within hours, the lab was sealed for analysis. Meanwhile, word of the discovery spread. Local news outlets ran the headline, "Lost photographer's camera, found after 22 years in Alaskan ice." Online forums erupted with theories. Some said the second figure was another climber. Others insisted it was a shadow, caused by Daniel's flash. The Park Service issued a cautious statement. The film appears authentic. Investigation ongoing. Daniel's sister, Leah Reed, flew to Alaska within a week. She hadn't been back since the original search. The park ranger, who met her at the airstrip, handed her the camera in a sealed evidence bag. She pressed it to her chest, tears catching on her parka. He used to say the ice remembers, she whispered. Maybe it finally spoke. Investigators developed the remaining frames one by one. The third showed snow ridges glowing violet in dusk. The fourth, an outcrop with Daniel's tracks curving toward a chasm. The fifth, a blurred streak of motion, perhaps wind or falling snow. The sixth was nearly black. The seventh stopped everyone in the room. A low-angle shot, likely taken with the camera resting on the ground, facing uphill toward the glacier face. In the distance, the faint outline of a man, or something shaped like one, standing where no human should have been. A second tripod? A reflection? The grain was too heavy to tell. But beneath the silhouette, faint letters scratched into snow read, "One more shot." After that, the negatives disintegrated. Theories multiplied. Some claimed Daniel had been following someone else's tracks. Others suggested he triggered his timer accidentally while setting up a self-portrait. But the seventh image reignited public fascination with the case. It didn't just confirm his final location, it suggested intent. He wasn't lost, he was chasing light. Rangers launched a new expedition to the coordinates triangulated from the photo's horizon lines. Using modern LiDAR imaging, they mapped a collapse zone half a mile from where his tent had been found. It was an area previously inaccessible due to crevasses and shifting ice. When the team reached it, they found fragments, the metal leg of a tripod, a rusted carabiner, and a strip of torn nylon. Under 5 feet of packed snow lay bones, partial but human. DNA matched. 22 years after Daniel Reed vanished, Alaska gave him back. But as investigators pieced together his camera's timeline, the last half-exposed frame revealed something no one expected. The light pattern on the glacier didn't match 2002's documented weather. It matched conditions recorded 3 days after his last known transmission, meaning Daniel had survived the fall. For at least 72 more hours, the mountain had kept him alive. The snow where they found him was unlike any other part of the glacier, dense, layered, and strangely undisturbed, as if the mountain itself had decided to preserve him. Rangers worked in silence, carving through ice so compact it rang like glass when struck. The small patch of nylon they uncovered was once the hood of Daniel Reed's parka. Beneath it lay bones folded inward, camera strap still looped around what remained of a shoulder. Lieutenant Renee Carter watched the excavation unfold from a few yards away, breathing clouds into the cold air. She'd led recoveries before, but this was different. There was reverence in every movement, a quiet understanding that they weren't just unearthing a body. They were retrieving a story that had been waiting for 2 decades to finish itself. The pack came up first, frozen solid. When they thawed it later, the contents were astonishingly intact. 2 rolls of film, a notebook sealed in plastic, a flashlight, a compass, and a letter tucked inside an envelope that had fused to the lining. The front read simply, Leah. The park sent everything to the Anchorage lab again. Technicians approached it as both forensic and archaeological work. Inside the notebook, Daniel's handwriting was small and steady, dated across 3 days, June 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, 2002. Each page held fragments, weather notes, exposure settings, thoughts scribbled between numbers. June 1st, camera survived fall. Lost tripod, leg bruised, tent gone. Light here is unreal, like the air itself glows. I'll try to climb East Ridge tomorrow. June 2nd, food low. Heard cracking under ice last night. Feels like breathing under me. Took photos until film jammed. Need to stay awake. Cold easier that way. June 3rd. Don't think anyone can see the flare. One frame left. If someone finds this, tell Leah I waited for morning light. That was the last entry. Sarah Van, the technician who'd restored the first film, now faced the second. The two new rolls from his pack were still sealed in their black canisters. The first roll developed with ordinary shots, landscapes, ice caves, self-portraits. The second roll was mostly black until frame 24. Then a faint glow appeared, the glacier edge lit by sunrise. Frame 25 was blurred, a smear of light, and frame 26, the last, was a low-angled photo of Daniel's glove reaching toward the camera lens. He had taken it lying down. When Leah saw the print, she whispered, "He wanted to be seen." The letter addressed to her was short, written in pencil so faint it barely registered until infrared imaging revealed the words, "Leah, if you're reading this, I didn't make it back. Don't be sad. I saw what I came to see. The light changed everything." She folded the note carefully and pressed it to her chest. "He always chased light," she said. It finally caught him. Forensics determined that Daniel likely fell through a weak snow bridge while traversing an uncharted ice ridge. The drop wasn't far, but his leg broke on impact. Unable to climb out, he used his camera bag for insulation, rationed food, and kept shooting until the cold took him. His final images, when color-corrected, showed the glacier glowing like liquid fire, gold and rose against blue ice. The light he'd described was real. Carter stood with Leah when they unveiled the recovered photographs at the lab. 12 perfect frames, colors untouched by time. The last ever taken by Daniel Reed. She stared at them in silence. "He turned dying into art," Carter said quietly. "Most people fade. He recorded the fading." The story spread worldwide within hours. Major outlets ran headlines like "Photographer's Final Shots Found After 22 Years in Ice." Documentary crews arrived in Seward. Climate scientists requested access to the negatives for environmental comparison, saying his work offered a unique visual record of glacial retreat. Art museums wanted exhibitions. For a few surreal weeks, Daniel's name returned to front pages he'd once dreamed of. But Leah wasn't chasing fame. She stayed mostly away from cameras, focusing on finishing what her brother started. Using coordinates from his journal, she organized an expedition to retrace his path and mark a memorial near his final camp. Carter joined her. They flew by helicopter, then trekked 2 miles across the same ice Daniel had walked. At the site, the glacier was half its old size, cracked, skeletal, almost unrecognizable. They found the faint outline of his last bivouac, a ring of stones he'd used to block wind. Leah placed the developed photos in a waterproof capsule, buried it beneath a cairn, and whispered, "Now the light belongs to you again." Carter photographed the ceremony quietly from a distance. Later that evening, as they hiked back, she noticed something shimmering inside a shallow pool, tiny flecks of metallic film drifting just beneath the surface. When she crouched closer, she realized they were fragments of the original roll, escaped during thaw. She scooped one out with gloved fingers. The emulsion caught sunlight, reflecting pink and blue like oil on water. "Even now, he's taking pictures," she said. Back in Anchorage, the recovered items went on temporary display at the Alaska State Museum. Daniel's Nikon, his notebook, and 2 prints enlarged nearly 6 feet wide. The final image, his hand reaching toward the lens, hung in the center. Visitors queued silently, many leaving notes beneath the frame. "He showed us how to see. The ice remembered. Light doesn't die, it waits." Leah donated the camera to the museum permanently, but kept the letter. "That's mine," she said. "That's between us." The FBI's forensic imaging team later confirmed the strange figure in his earlier reflection photo was Daniel himself, captured by multiple light sources from his flash and the ice refraction. No mystery man, no ghost, just the photographer meeting his own gaze. It became symbolic, the man who disappeared into his subject. By late summer, the glacier started closing over the excavation site again. Meltwater streams carried fresh layers of snowmelt down the valley, erasing footprints. Carter returned one last time before the season ended. The cairn Leah had built stood firm, but thin rivulets already lapped at its base. She placed a stone from her pocket beside it and whispered, "You found the morning light." The next week, clouds rolled in and snow began to fall again. The mountain, content, covered everything once more. Months later, Leah received a final envelope from the lab. Inside was a digital scan of Daniel's last frame in full color, cleaned of scratches. The hues were unlike anything she'd seen. Warm, surreal, the glacier sky bleeding orange and crimson through blue frost. She printed it large and hung it above her studio desk. When the sun hit it just right, it looked alive. That winter, she launched a traveling exhibit called The Light Changes Fast Here. Each gallery dimmed its lights before showing the final photograph, accompanied only by the sound of wind and crackling ice. Viewers said it felt like standing inside his last breath. The exhibit raised funds for search and rescue operations across Alaska. Every poster carried a single quote, "Follow the light, it remembers." But the most haunting image came from Travis, the hiker who had found the camera. Before leaving the Icefield, he'd taken a photo of the spot where it was buried. The hole, now refrozen, smooth and perfect, a lens made by nature itself. When the light struck it, you could see your own reflection, faint and blurred, just like Daniel's second frame. Sometimes people returned there, leaving flowers frozen under the surface, preserved for seasons at a time. From above, it looked like the mountain was keeping its promises in ice. And though the glacier kept moving, slowly grinding downhill as it always had, Daniel Reed's images remained still, an impossible kind of permanence, a reminder that even the coldest places can hold warmth if someone once looked at them with love. By the end of the year, the museum exhibit was renamed. Just 2 words now, simple and complete: the light. Winter swallowed the glacier again. The same snow that had once hidden Daniel Reed now gleamed brighter than anyone remembered. Silver under the moon, untouched by boot or track. From above, it looked like the mountain had erased its story, yet something invisible lingered beneath. The echo of a shudder. The faint memory of a Nan still chasing light through ice. Leo returned one last time in February 2025, bundled in a thick parka, wind biting through every seam. The air was razor thin, soundless except for the distant groan of ice shifting miles below. She hiked alone to the cairn where she'd buried her brother's film capsule months earlier. The snow had covered it completely, but she found the spot by instinct, by the rhythm of the wind against the ridge. She stood there for a long time, watching sunlight move across the peaks. For 2 decades, she had imagined his final hours as fear or desperation. Now she saw something else: peace. "You found it," she whispered. "You got the shot." She placed a single fresh photograph on the snow, printed from his recovered negatives. It caught the wind and slid gently until it vanished down the slope. She smiled. "Keep going, Danny." Back in Anchorage, the exhibit, The Light, had become a phenomenon. Museums in London, Tokyo, and New York requested installations. Critics called it a love letter written in frost. Viewers queued for hours to see the final frame, his hand reaching toward the camera. Some said it felt as though he was trying to pass them something invisible, an inheritance of vision. Others said it looked like he was saying goodbye. Every interpretation was true. When journalists asked Leah why the story resonated so deeply, she answered simply, "Because he didn't die looking for fame. He died looking for beauty." And beauty doesn't die. The Alaska State Museum curated a permanent room for his work, lined with cold LED panels mimicking glacier light. The Nikon camera sat in the center, encased in clear resin, frost patterns intentionally preserved across its lens. Next to it, his handwritten note: "The light changed everything." Visitors left small gifts at the base: tiny cameras, sketches, rolls of undeveloped film. Museum staff stopped removing them. It became a quiet ritual of gratitude from strangers who understood what it meant to chase something impossible. Meanwhile, forensic climatologists continued studying Daniel's photos. When they overlaid his final glacier images with current satellite data, they realized his work had unintentionally captured the last intact face of a section that melted away entirely by 2007. His final photograph was now a record of something gone forever. "He preserved extinction," one scientist said softly. "He gave memory to what nature erased." The media cycle eventually quieted. Winter turned to spring. Leah found herself back home in Seattle, sorting through Daniel's old storage boxes: slides, journals, unfinished rolls. One notebook contained early entries from before his last trip, ideas for a photo book he'd never completed. The title on the first page read, "Light Lessons." Each line underneath listed fragments. 1. Never rush sunrise. 2. Take the shot even if no one sees it. 3. The glacier moves, but you can still stand still. She closed it, smiling through tears. In April, the mountain thaw began again. Meltwater carved new channels down the Icefield, revealing fresh layers beneath. Rangers found shards of Daniel's original tripod drifting near the moraine, tiny, twisted, yet gleaming when cleaned. They mailed them to Leah. She took one piece, turned it into a pendant, and wore it every day. "He's still here," she told Carter. When they met for coffee before Carter's retirement, Carter had seen plenty of endings, but this one stayed with her. "Most disappearances leave echoes," she said. "Your brother left a beacon." That summer, Leah organized a final expedition, this time with a small team of students from the University of Alaska's photography department. Their mission wasn't to search, but to see. To stand where Daniel had stood and photograph the same ridge 22 years later. The glacier had retreated nearly a mile. What had once been ice was now a field of dark rock and new streams. Nature was rewriting the map again. When they reached the ridge, Leah positioned the students along the line where his tripod must have stood. "He pointed his lens this way," she said, gesturing toward the horizon. "Now, you do the same. Let's see what's changed." They shot frame after frame, light shifting quickly, the air electric with wind. When they reviewed the images later, the colors looked eerily similar to Daniel's: gold bleeding into blue, shadows curling like smoke. "It's like he left instructions," one student whispered. That night, they camped near the base of the Icefield. Stars scattered overhead in brutal clarity, unfiltered by cloud or city. Leah lay awake, listening to the glacier crack and sigh beneath her sleeping bag, the same sound Daniel must have heard. She felt no fear, only quiet awe. "You weren't alone," she murmured into the dark. "The mountain was with you." Back in Anchorage, Carter finally boxed her field notes for good. She left a single envelope on her desk before locking the door. Inside was a photograph of the glacier at dawn, taken during the recovery mission, and a handwritten message: "He showed us the way home." When Leah returned from the expedition, she visited the museum one final time. The gallery was nearly empty near closing hour. She walked straight to the display of his final photo. Under soft light, his gloves seemed to glow, fingers stretched toward infinity. She reached out her own hand and aligned it with the glass, fingertip to fingertip. For a moment, her reflection merged with his. Then, the lights dimmed automatically, and he faded back into darkness. She stood there, tears warm against her cold face, and whispered, "We found the morning light." That same night, A winter storm swept across the Icefield. Wind howled down the ridges, filling cracks and gullies with fresh snow. The cairn she had built vanished under the drift. But when sunlight broke the next morning, pilots flying overhead reported seeing something extraordinary. A thin band of rainbow light reflecting off the glacier's face, right where Daniel had fallen. It lasted only seconds, then dissolved. Some called it refraction. Others called it his last photo, finally developing in the sky. By the end of the year, the light exhibit concluded its world tour, returning home to Alaska. Attendance surpassed 1 million visitors. The final installation included a video projection of the glacier's time-lapse from 2002 to 2024, fading slowly into Daniel's final frame. The last caption read, "He followed the light until it became him." And in that frozen stillness, the mountain seemed alive again, breathing, remembering, holding him not as something lost, but as something seen. Somewhere under layers of snow and time, Daniel's footprints remained, fossilized into ice that would one day melt and feed the rivers below. When that happened, his water would join the sea he'd photographed so many times, circling the world like the light he'd chased all his life. For most people, vanishing means being forgotten. For Daniel Reed, it meant becoming part of what he loved. And when the glacier shifts again decades from now, when new hikers step onto the thawing ice, maybe they'll find the glint of something small, a shard of glass, a piece of metal, or a single frame of film still holding color. Maybe they'll hold it up to the sun, and the mountain will whisper the same thing it told Leah and everyone who ever saw his work. The light changed everything.